She stood in the rain for nearly an hour, staring at the house they used to share. He wasn't there anymore. Not really. Not the man she married. Not the promises they made. After 24 years of marriage, he wanted out. And not just from her heart. From everything. The house, the business, their life. But this story isn't about a messy divorce. It's not about money or infidelity or broken vows. It's about something colder. It's about what happens when someone is told they're no longer wanted and they refuse to let go. In April of 1996, police in New York discovered something so brutal, it left even the most hardened detectives shaken. A respected businessman hacked to death, his body dismembered and all fingers pointed back to the one person he once trusted most. Her name was Rita Gluzman. And what started as a bitter breakup became one of the most infamous revenge killings of the decade. This is the story of how love became war, how a wife turned into a killer, and why, even now, she says she would do it all again. Before the headlines, before the courtroom sketches and the blood-stained basement, there was just Rita. A girl from Ukraine, born into scarcity, raised under the cold shadow of Soviet rule. She grew up watching people disappear, not just from their homes, but from history. To survive meant to adapt. To love meant to sacrifice. And Rita was good at both. When she met Yakov Gluzman, she was barely in her 20s. He was intelligent, gentle, quiet, the kind of man who looked like he carried secrets but never raised his voice. They married quickly, moved to Israel, and eventually they made it to America, the land of second chances, the land where nothing had to stay broken. Rita believed in that dream. She fought for it, for her husband, for herself. While Yakov built his biotech company from scratch, Rita took care of everything else. The home, the business logistics, the unglamorous tasks no one applauded. For nearly 24 years, she remained in his shadow. She pushed him forward while staying behind. And for most of that time, it was enough. But things change. People change. Or maybe they just reveal who they really are. By 1996, Yakov was no longer the quiet dreamer. He was successful, independent, and suddenly distant. He began staying late at work, cancelling plans. He said it was stress. She thought it was something or someone else. Then came the silence, legal documents, filed secretly, a divorce, a separation of assets, a plan to walk away from the very life she helped build. She wasn't just losing a husband, she was losing everything. And for Rita Gluzman, that wasn't something she could just accept. Divorce, in most cases, is the quiet death of a shared dream. But for Rita Gluzman, it felt like a public execution. When Yakov filed for divorce, he did it with precision, behind her back, quietly removing her name from financial accounts, freezing assets, locking her out of the very company she helped build. The house? His. The business? His. The story? His version. Rita was just the bitter ex-wife, the complication. But Rita didn't disappear quietly. She challenged the divorce, fought every motion, demanded her share, not out of greed, but out of principle. She believed she had built that life too. She wasn't going to be erased from it. And that's when it got darker. Yakov, now living separately, began telling friends he feared Rita, that she was unstable, obsessive, dangerous. He even recorded phone conversations, documented threats, showed letters she had written in desperation, rage, love, often all at once. In the eyes of the law, he was building a case. In Rita's eyes, he was rewriting history, At one point, she reportedly told a friend, "If I can't have what's mine, he doesn't get to enjoy it either." It was said in a moment of frustration, of heartbreak, but sometimes words aren't just words. Rita started watching Yakov's house, tracking his movements. She knew when he got home, when he left, what lights stayed on. She called an old cousin, Vladimir Zelenin, a man who owed her a favor or feared what she was becoming. Together they made a plan, or perhaps just a decision, one they couldn't come back from. On April 6, 1996, Rita Gluzman crossed a line. She drove to Yakov's apartment with Vladimir. She knew he'd be home. She knew he wouldn't expect it. What happened in that apartment was brutal, unforgivable, and yet, to Rita, it was justified. Yakov was bludgeoned to death with an axe. 40 blows, no hesitation. His body was dismembered, packed into garbage bags, loaded into a car like he was nothing more than waste. They dumped the remains into the Passaic River, not all at once, not in a rush, carefully, methodically. Because when someone's erased from your life, some believe they should be erased from the world too. They thought it would be clean. They thought no one would look for him, not for a while. But Yakov Gluzman didn't just vanish. He left a trail. When Yakov failed to show up for a critical business meeting, colleagues grew concerned. He was always punctual, always in control. The silence, it wasn't just unusual, it was alarming. Police were notified. A welfare check was conducted, and what they found wasn't a crime scene. It was an absence. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, no blood. Just a locked apartment and nothing. But detectives know something most people don't, that sometimes the absence of chaos is the biggest clue of all. They questioned family, friends. They called Rita. Her voice was steady, cold. She hadn't spoken to him, she said. She didn't know where he was. But when asked if she was worried, she simply said, "No." That one word hung in the air. 2 days later, fishermen near the Passaic River made a gruesome discovery. A black trash bag, bloated, sinking slowly. Inside, what appeared to be a human limb. It was only the beginning. Over the next 48 hours, more bags surfaced, more pieces, more horror. The remains were partial, but the forensic team did what they could. Dental records confirmed the worst. Yakov Gluzman had been murdered and discarded. The crime wasn't just vicious, it was calculated. The nature of the cuts, the method of disposal, this wasn't a moment of rage, it was a mission. Detectives revisited every name, every contact, and one thing became clear: Rita had motive, rage, and most dangerously, time. Neighbors reported seeing her car parked near Yakov's apartment that night. Phone records placed her near the river. But it wasn't until they found Vladimir that the walls began to close in. He was anxious, distant, and then, suddenly cooperative. He told them everything. The axe, the body, the bags, the way Rita calmly handed him gloves, bleach, and a plan. She had recruited family into murder, not out of desperation, but conviction. To her, this wasn't a crime, it was closure. Rita was arrested in New York, calm, almost bored, as if this moment had already played out in her mind over and over again. The trial would be long, graphic, but the prosecution didn't need poetry. They had facts. Blood, bags, a confession, and one woman who still didn't blink. She pleaded not guilty, but the truth didn't care. It began on a cold morning in Manhattan. Inside the courtroom, the air wasn't just tense, it was electrified. Because this wasn't just a murder trial. This was the unraveling of a marriage, a family, and a woman who believed the only way to win was to eliminate the game. Rita Gluzman sat stone-faced beside her defense team, her hair pulled back, her hands folded, her expression unreadable. And across the aisle sat the ghost of what once was the Gluzman family, now fractured beyond repair. The prosecution wasted no time. This, they told the jury, was not a crime of passion. It was not a momentary lapse, not a heat-of-the-moment slip. This was calculated, premeditated, cold. They laid out the facts like weapons. The axe, the garbage bags, the bleach, the gloves. The plan to dismember a man she once vowed to love. They played the 911 call from the fisherman. The room was silent. Then came the photos, the evidence. Not just of Yakov's remains, but of the life he was trying to rebuild. Emails, documents, rental agreements, divorce filings, all proving one thing. He was moving on, and she could not accept that. Then came Vladimir Zelenin, her cousin, her accomplice. His testimony shook the courtroom. "She told me what to do," he said. "She handed me the axe herself. She said, 'Don't stop until he's gone.'" Gasps filled the room, eyes widened. But Rita never flinched. Not once. Her defense claimed she was coerced, manipulated, that Vladimir had twisted the truth to save himself. They painted her as desperate, abandoned, and emotionally broken. But the jury wasn't moved by shadows. They wanted light, truth, resolution. And when the closing arguments were made, everyone in that courtroom knew this was more than a verdict. It was a statement that no amount of rage, no depth of betrayal justifies dismembering a man and tossing him into a river like garbage. The jury returned after only a few hours. Guilty of murder in the second degree, guilty of conspiracy, guilty of tampering with physical evidence. Rita blinked once, then looked down. There were no tears, no apologies, just silence. The courtroom emptied slowly that day, but the echo of what had unfolded stayed behind. In the corners, on the floor, in the minds of every single person who had watched the trial. Rita Gluzman, wife, mother, immigrant, survivor, was now a convicted murderer. But the story didn't end with the gavel, because the sentencing phase was where the mask would finally fall. Yakov's brother took the stand, his voice trembling. He talked about holidays, about the smell of borscht in the kitchen, the laughter over dinner tables, the plans they once had. Then he described the black bag pulled from the river, the absence, the silence, the void left behind. His mother collapsed in the hallway after the verdict. Rita, still in her seat, blinked twice, then looked up at the ceiling as if searching for something. Anything that could make sense of what just happened. The judge's voice broke the stillness. "You didn't just kill your husband, Mrs. Gluzman. You erased a man. You planned it, you executed it, and you showed no remorse." And with that, she was sentenced. Life in federal prison. No possibility of parole. No opportunity to rewrite her ending. The media outside called it the most gruesome domestic homicide of the decade. Some said she was a monster. Others called her a victim of her own obsession. But the facts didn't change. A man was gone. A family was shattered. And a woman who once fought to survive oppression overseas now lived behind bars in America. For years, Rita maintained her innocence. Letters to journalists, appeals, claims of betrayal by her cousin. But none of them erased the evidence. The axe, the plastic bags, the bleach, the planning, the silence. They were all louder than her words ever could be. And so, she remained exactly where the law placed her. Alone, locked away, and left with nothing but her thoughts. Time passed slowly behind those prison walls. Seasons changed. Faces came and went. But Rita Gluzman stayed still clinging to her version of the truth, still writing letters, still fighting shadows. Even from a concrete cell, she insisted she was not a murderer. She blamed her cousin, confessed accomplice and star witness, for orchestrating the killing. Said she had no idea it would go that far, that she only wanted a divorce, not blood. But the facts didn't lie, and neither did the stains on her apartment floor. The jury didn't believe her, and the public had already made up its mind. A new documentary aired 10 years later. Interviews, phone calls, recordings. It reignited the debate. Was Rita a calculating killer, or a woman pushed past her breaking point? One thing was certain: her story wasn't just about murder. It was about obsession, about power, about the quiet ways love can decay until there's nothing left but rage. Psychologists weighed in. Some called it a textbook narcissistic collapse. Others saw signs of trauma buried deep in her early life. Either way, Yakov Gluzman paid the ultimate price. And no one could bring him back. Not the justice system. Not the cameras. Not the silence that followed. To this day, some people write her letters. They call her misunderstood, a martyr of a broken system. Others? They can't even say her name. Because for them, Rita Gluzman is a reminder that sometimes monsters don't hide in shadows. They walk beside you, sleep beside you, wear a wedding ring, and smile like nothing's wrong. This is not just a murder story. It's a mirror held up to love when it turns toxic, to control disguised as care, and to vengeance so sharp it doesn't just destroy the enemy, it destroys everyone, including the one who wanted it most. So we ask you, do you believe she was truly guilty? Or was she a prisoner long before she ever saw a cell? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe to beyondherrage, where we tell true stories of women who loved too deeply, hurt too long, and snapped without warning.